All right, so get this. We're diving into a story
Oh, yeah.
that sounds like straight out of like a spy thriller, you know?
Okay.
Except it's all too real. And
All right.
our subject, Victor Manuel Rocha. This guy managed to climb the ranks of the U.S. State Department,
Uh-huh.
all while secretly working for Cuba.
Wow.
Can you believe it?
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
It really is.
We've got all this material you've provided that maps out Rocha's life.
Right.
From his early days to his shocking betrayal.
Yeah.
But let's start with understanding his journey within the State Department.
Okay.
This wasn't just some quick climb.
Wow.
This guy held some incredibly influential positions.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. Absolutely. Rocha wasn't just filing papers in some back office.
Right.
He started as a visa officer,
Okay.
which already gives you a glimpse into the kind of information he had access to.
Yeah.
But then he moved on to the National Security Council.
Whoa.
Think about that for a second.
That's where like top-level national security decisions are made.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it gets even more unsettling.
Oh, no.
He eventually became the U.S. ambassador to Bolivia
Whoa.
and even served as the principal officer at the U.S. interest section in Havana.
Really?
Each of these roles gave him access to incredibly sensitive intelligence information that could have been hugely damaging in the wrong hands.
No kidding. And one of the sources put it quite bluntly.
Yeah.
Basically, the United States slept with the enemy. Chilling.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this brings us to a crucial question. How did his cover remain intact for 4 decades?
Well, it seems even the most seasoned spies can slip up.
Yeah.
Rocha, perhaps feeling a little too sure of himself, ended up boasting about outsmarting the U.S.
Oh, wow.
to an undercover FBI agent. Talk about a miscalculation.
Classic case of pride leading to downfall. But to truly grasp the why behind Rocha's actions, we need to understand his past.
Right, because the man behind the betrayal is just as fascinating as the act itself.
Okay.
And his story is a study in contrasts. Here's a Colombian immigrant who grew up facing poverty in Harlem, yet he manages to achieve a triple Ivy League education. Yale, Harvard, Georgetown. Talk about ambition.
It makes you wonder, did his experiences navigating a system that could often feel stacked against outsiders shape his ideology? Could this have made him a prime target for Cuban intelligence, especially during his university years?
That's a good point. And it's particularly interesting because one of the sources actually highlights how Cuban intelligence actively sought out potential recruits from universities,
Really?
focusing on those who displayed a strong commitment to revolutionary ideals.
Yes, they were very meticulous.
Oh.
They would analyze students' backgrounds, their social circles, their political leanings. They were looking for individuals who might be susceptible to their message.
So are we talking about some elaborate grooming process?
In a way, yes. They weren't just looking for individuals who were disgruntled. They were seeking out those with a certain intellectual capacity, a sense of idealism, even a touch of resentment towards the established order. People they could mold and manipulate.
Makes you wonder how much of Rocha's ideology was shaped by his own experiences versus cultivated by Cuban intelligence. I'm also curious about the psychological analysis the source delves into.
Okay.
They point to a particular incident that supposedly offers a glimpse into Rocha's inner turmoil.
You're thinking about the event where Hillary Clinton is dancing with Argentine President Carlos Menem, and Rocha is watching with this seemingly envious look,
Right.
right?
Yes. But why would the source interpret that as something deeper than simple jealousy?
Because they suggest that Rocha's expression went beyond that. They describe it as if he was saying to himself, "Look at you fools dancing while I deceive you openly without you realizing it." They interpret it as him relishing his hidden power, his ability to manipulate those in power.
So the source is suggesting his betrayal wasn't just ideological.
Right.
There was a psychological element, perhaps even a twisted sense of satisfaction derived from his deception.
Exactly. But what truly fueled him? Was it purely a commitment to Cuban ideals? Resentment? A thirst for power? It's a complex puzzle to untangle.
It's like trying to decipher a code, looking for the key that unlocks his motivations.
Yeah.
The source also brings in Fulton Armstrong, a former CIA analyst, who suggests Rocha might have felt alienated within the U.S. government, specifically the State Department. Do you think that played a role?
It's certainly a possibility, especially considering the culture that permeated the State Department at that time. You see, back then there was this pervasive sentiment encapsulated by the saying, Yale, pale, and male.
Yale, pale, and male. What does that mean?
It essentially describes the dominant demographic within the State Department during that era, predominantly white men from privileged backgrounds, many of whom were Ivy League graduates.
Okay.
It points to a lack of diversity and representation, which could have contributed to a sense of exclusion for someone like Rocha.
Interesting. So we're talking about a system that might have made someone like Rocha, a Colombian immigrant who clawed his way to the top,
Yeah,
feel like an outsider despite his achievements.
precisely. And this links back to a point we raised earlier. Did the perceived injustices within the U.S. government, particularly its policies towards Latin America, resonate with Rocha's own experiences?
Yeah.
Could this have fueled his decision to betray the very system he was a part of?
That adds a whole new layer to this, doesn't it? We're
Yeah.
not just talking about a spy versus a nation.
Right.
We're talking about an individual grappling with his identity, his place in a system that might have made him feel marginalized despite his success. This is getting really interesting.
It is, because it suggests that Rocha's story isn't just about espionage, but about the complex interplay of personal experiences, systemic issues, and ideological struggle.
Okay, hold on. We need to unpack all of this. There's so much to consider here. So we're talking about a system that could have fostered this deep sense of alienation,
Yeah.
pushing someone like Rocha with his unique background and experiences towards this path of betrayal.
It's definitely a compelling argument.
Yeah.
We often focus on the grand narratives of espionage ideology, national interest. But what if personal experiences of injustice and exclusion are just as powerful motivators?
That's a really thought-provoking point.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at Rocha's motivations, it seems like we're dealing with a whole bunch of factors, right?
Right.
We've got his personal history, the potential influence of Cuban intelligence, and the sense of alienation within the very system that he was a part of.
Exactly. And that brings us back to that central question. What ultimately drove Victor Rocha? Was it a pure ideological allegiance to Cuba? A desire to right the perceived wrongs of the U.S.? Or maybe even a more personal vendetta against a system he felt had betrayed him?
It's like trying to piece together a puzzle, except the pieces are all these different aspects of his life and experiences.
Precisely. And this deep dive into Rocha's story, while it may not give us all the answers, does offer valuable insights into the world of espionage. It's a reminder that the motivations behind betrayal are rarely black and white.
Yeah.
They're often shades of gray, confining desires and a complex interplay of personal and political factors.
It's like we're cracking open the human element at the heart of this espionage case.
Yes, and it underscores the importance of understanding the psychology behind betrayal.
Okay.
It's not always a simple equation of loyalty versus disloyalty. There can be a whole host of underlying reasons, often rooted in deeply personal experiences.
This reminds me of something else the source highlighted. They actually went beyond analyzing Rocha's individual psychology
Okay.
and started exploring the potential systemic issues that could have contributed to his actions. Specifically, they pointed to this Yale pale and male culture within the State Department.
Yes.
Yeah.
That phrase, while it might seem like a simple descriptor, speaks volumes about the historical context of the State Department.
Okay.
We're not just talking about a few isolated incidents of bias. We're talking about a system that for a long time was predominantly shaped by a particular demographic, white men from elite backgrounds.
So you're saying that this culture of exclusivity might have created blind spots, making it easier for someone like Rocha to operate undetected?
It's certainly possible. This lack of diversity, both in terms of demographics and viewpoints, could have created an environment where certain assumptions went unchallenged.
Right.
And it's not hard to imagine how someone like Rocha, who didn't fit the mold, might have exploited those blind spots.
I see what you mean. It's like the system itself created the conditions for its own vulnerability. But let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
The source also touches on the broader implications of Rocha's case, particularly in terms of national security and the need for institutional reform. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Rocha's story serves as a stark reminder that even the most powerful institutions are not infallible. It exposes vulnerabilities that we often overlook, particularly when it comes to human factors. We tend to focus on technological safeguards. But what about the human element? How do we protect against betrayal from within?
That's a big question. Where do we even begin to address that?
I think it starts with recognizing that security isn't just about walls and fences. It's about understanding human motivations, about fostering a culture of trust and accountability, and about creating systems that are resilient to manipulation.
So instead of just focusing on keeping bad guys out, we need to think about how to prevent good guys from turning bad.
Exactly. It's about addressing the root causes that can lead to disillusionment and betrayal. And that includes things like promoting diversity and inclusion, fostering open dialogue, and addressing systemic biases that can alienate individuals and make them more susceptible to external influences.
So it's not just about catching spies, it's about creating an environment where espionage is less likely to happen in the first place.
Precisely. It's about building a system that is strong from within, where individuals feel valued, respected, and invested in its success.
That makes a lot of sense. But how do we translate that into concrete actions? What specific steps can institutions like the State Department take to avoid creating future Victor Rochas?
Well, it's not a quick fix. It requires a fundamental shift in mindset and a commitment to long-term change. But here are a few key things to consider.
So no easy solutions, but where do we even begin?
Well, for starters, I think we need to acknowledge and address the systemic biases that exist within these institutions.
So you're saying we need to take a hard look at that Yale pale and male issue we were talking about?
Exactly. While that phrase might seem like a simplification, it highlights a very real problem.
Yeah.
Lack of diversity and representation.
So we're talking about actively recruiting and promoting individuals from all walks of life.
Yes.
Not just in terms of race and gender, but socioeconomic background, ideology, life experiences.
Absolutely. The whole package.
Yeah, the whole package.
Yeah.
So create a more
welcoming and inclusive
environment where people feel valued and respected regardless of where they come from or what they believe.
Well, exactly.
Because if people feel like their voices aren't being heard or that their experiences are being dismissed, they're more likely to become disillusioned.
Exactly. It's about fostering a culture of open dialogue.
Yeah.
Where different perspectives are not just tolerated, but actively encouraged. This creates a sense of belonging, a shared purpose, where individuals feel invested in the success of the institution.
And that sense of investment can act as a safeguard against those external influences, those whispers in the ear that can lead to betrayal.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that diversity isn't just some politically correct box to tick.
Right.
It's a crucial element of strength. A diversity of perspectives leads to better decision-making, better problem-solving, and ultimately a more resilient and secure nation.
So it's not just about preventing espionage. It's about building a better system.
Right.
A system that's more robust, more adaptable, and more representative of the people it serves.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of security and inclusivity.
This has been a fascinating deep dive into the life of Victor Manuel Rocha.
It really has.
A story that's taken us from the halls of power to the complexities of human motivation.
Indeed, Rocha's story serves as a powerful reminder that espionage isn't just about shadowy figures and cloak and dagger operations.
Right.
It's about the human heart, the choices we make, and the systems that shape those choices.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with this thought.
Okay.
Think about your own sphere of influence.
Yeah.
Your workplace, your community, your family. Are there ways you can contribute to creating a more inclusive and equitable environment?
Because ultimately change starts with each of us. By recognizing and addressing our own biases, by speaking up against injustice, by fostering empathy and understanding, we can create a world where stories like Rocha's become relics of the past rather than harbingers of the future.
That's a powerful message and a fitting end to our deep dive. Thanks for joining us.